Seems like our little corner episodes like to focus on the rural community, especially the farm families here in the North Country, and we've done quite a few programs with and for the farmers, and that pleases me a great deal. When our program started way back last summer, at least my edition of Our Little Corner, we went to go to the three county fairs, and that was a delightful and delicious experience to me to go to fairs I hadn't been to for years and renew old friendships. Today we're back not very far from where Calvin hails. You can see the big silos of the Castine farm right up the road. We're here on the Ridge Road at Bourdeau Brothers, familiar to people in this area for dealing in fertilizers and seeds, and we want to meet some of the farming community because they have their pioneer days every year when the farmers come to town, check out what's new in the business, and meet some of the company representatives. And it gives us a special pleasure to come on down and meet some of the farmers themselves. We've heard some pretty rough, hard luck stories over the last few years, and our little corner isn't seen by everybody in the world, but we've been getting a little feedback as we talk to some of our politicians and about what we think the farmers need to survive, and it's kind of tough. I forgot your name already.
Gary Menard.
Gary Bernard and
Connie Menard.
Connie Menard. Menard and Bedard, two
Menard.
North Country names.
Yeah.
So Menard.
Yeah.
Where do you live?
Morse. Thompson Road in Morse.
And how big a farm do you have?
We milk 60, 70 cows. So keeps us busy. Just a family farm. We've got 140 head altogether. And keeps us busy. Between her and I and the 4 boys, we've got 4 boys.
Oh, it's a family affair. Farming has to be a family affair, doesn't it?
Certainly.
Was your farm in the family before you got it, or?
Nope. We ventured out on our own and we bought the farm. And
We both come from farms. Both his dad and my dad were farmers and still are farmers. And when we got married, we started with some heifers that we bought in a rented barn. And 13 years ago, we bought the farm that we're at now.
You're smiling, so you made it to this point in time, but I bet you a few days you wonder.
Well,
certainly.
the name of our farm is Happy Haven, so.
You know, that's not a bad idea to start that way and work your way up if you possibly can. Were you really struck bad by the ice storm?
Fortunately, we were prepared. We had a generator that we previously owned, so that was the ticket to whether you got through the ice storm unharmed somewhat. We did have to dump some milk in the backfield, which was a little different than we've situation to go through to see the milk come out of the cow and through a pipe and out the backfield.
We've seen milk dumping for other reasons in the past, but for this reason, it kind of breaks your heart a little bit, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. But the reason we had to dump the milk because they couldn't pick it up. We were able to milk the cows and everything, but they just weren't able to pick it up and deliver it to the plant. That's why we ended up dumping it, but we didn't make out too bad. Worked out well. We were fortunate.
You didn't lose any cattle, or no real serious problem from trees, or?
No, we were fortunate through the storm.
Definitely.
The one thing about farmers are they're usually ready for just about anything. I don't think everybody was completely ready for that mess, though, do you?
No, that was a total surprise to everybody. Definitely, and hopefully we won't be surprised by that for a long time again.
Let's talk a little bit about why people are here today. Calvin and I on the way over here were talking about how different things are now from the old days. When you get really old like I am and kind of just a little tad past middle age, as Calvin behind the camera is there, you tend to compare the new days with the old days. And the old days weren't necessarily the good old days, even though we call them the good old days, but farming certainly has changed from the time when we used to milk about 35 cows by hand.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit since then. It's a business now. You have to treat it like a business. Even though we have a family farm, it's still treated as a business, and we make business decisions. You make bad decisions, you're going to pay.
Seems like farmers are paying whether they make good or bad decisions someday. You know, it's hard for a lot of people viewing who live in the cities and villages in the North Country to understand why anybody would go into farming. I think you've already showed us that you're doing it because your families did it, and you know it to be a great way of life.
It's an excellent place to raise a family. And like I said, we have 4 boys, and I can think of no better way to raise a family than on a farm. Most people our age have been raised on the farm. And I drive school bus, and I see people that have kids that have nothing to do, that don't have farms or anything else to do, and there's a big difference. Attitude and big difference. So that's why we like to farm.
Yeah, there are a lot of things to learn, a lot of lessons to learn down on the farm, as they used to say, right?
It just comes down to the fact that you spend so much of your life working, you have to enjoy your job, or your life is going to suck.
We enjoy farming.
Well, the way you named your farm explains it all. If you have a passion for something, Calvin and I were discussing that again long before we went on camera. Neither one of us are ever going to be rich in our lifetimes, but we have passions for what we do. I had a passion for the radio business for 3.5 decades. Now I have a passion for another job as a victims advocate, and with the ham bone in me, waiting for the pancakes over there, you know I'm going to have a passion for this one as well. So there's a lot to be said for that. Let's talk about the differences between yesterday and today, since this is, people are here to find out about what? About different kind of seeds and things?
Different kind of seeds and what new chemicals they're using that'll kill this weed or that weed. And it's just, they do a lot of research in the corn. The corn is, everything's all researched. There's corn for cold soils, there's corn for sand, there's corn for clay ground. It's
For what the end purpose of the corn is going to be, whether it be for silage or whether it be for grain. Whether your season is long, whether your season is short, your growing degree days, everything's brought into the research of the corn seed. It's not like it used to be where I'll take 15 bushels of corn, any corn. It's not like that anymore.
That's what Calvin said on my way over here. He said farmers have to know everything. They have to know what degree days are. Most people don't have a clue about what a degree day is.
So, I'm not real sure how the degree days are calculated, but it plays a very important role in how the corn grows, how well a yield you get, and
What you said, farmers have to know a lot.
You almost have to be a chemist,
Well, the old theory used to be, I don't need to finish school, I'm going to stay on the farm. Or he's just going to stay on the farm, so he doesn't need an education. It's not like that anymore. You have to know a good deal about the crops. You have to be almost a veterinarian. It's just a financial person. You have to be good with the numbers and on the business end of it, because you just have to be.
Yeah, you got to be able to fix stuff. You got to be
build stuff.
You got to be junior Tom Messners, because you have to be a meteorologist. If you don't know what the weather's doing, you can be out of business real quick.
And that's the problem lately. The last 2 years, there's no more weather pattern. We don't know what to expect anymore. We're getting all these different weather patterns, and so it's hard. What worked in the past isn't working now. So we used to plant corn early May, and sometimes the years doesn't allow us to do that. This year here, there's a lot of snow. We'll be getting in the fields later this year. There's going to be a lot of runoff, a lot of wet fields. See, we don't have tile ground. That's why I talk about I have to buy seed corn that'll tolerate cold ground, because my ground is not tiled. So there's a lot to learn.
Yeah,
we learn more every year.
Well, we've already covered about 15 different fields of study here, and many times farmers have to pay attention. You gotta read up on what's new. You gotta visit places like the Pioneer Days here to see what new seeds are. Calvin mentioned on the way over here again, he gave me a very liberal education in the car. The various kinds of corn you could plant at different times, because it matures at different time periods.
There's 75-day corn, 85, 95, goes up to 105. The more days it is, the better your yield. But I can't plant 105-day corn because my ground's too cold to get the corn in early. People that have tile ground could do the 105-day corn, which they get a little better yield. So it's different.
And in some cases, there isn't much room for error. You can't get the wrong stuff or you're in big trouble.
They're right there.
That's the big
And
thing.
every time you learn something, it costs you money. So
Well, that's true.
And that's the big thing with spraying. Last year was such a dry year, most people sprayed and the chemicals didn't work because it was too dry. We didn't get the moisture to draw the chemical in. So they had to respray. It costs as much to spray a field as it does to put seed and fertilizer in the field. Very expensive. So it's something you don't want to play with, you know. That's where these guys here come in handy. You know, they're very good agronomists.
Hopefully, farmers will start getting a much bigger yield for the effort they put into all of this. And even though you can be passionate about something, you still got to feed those 4 kids.
That's right.
And you got to feed those cows, and you got to keep things going from year to year. And every day I hope I see a little glimmer there that things may be a little bit better. Milk prices may be getting a little bit better. You might get a little help from our government on the local, state, and federal level. So hopefully you as a young farm family can survive, and maybe at least half of those 4 boys will do the same thing when they get to your age.
well, the people in the United States have to realize that they're always complaining about the price of food. They already have cheap food. When they start complaining about the price of milk going up 20 cents a gallon, I mean, for what it would do for us, it really is hard to take.
So let's do it today.
20
Yeah.
cents a gallon. If a family buys 5 gallons a week, that's only $1. But what it amounts to, whether it keeps the farm families in business or not, 20 years from now, if you don't have as many farms as you do now, you're going to pay a lot more than 20 cents a gallon for your milk. More, so.
I think we're going to send her to Washington. She'd be on a good lobby team for the farmers. So great to meet you guys. Best of luck in everything you do.
Same here. Nice to meet you.
Now it's the Menard story, chapter 2. Because when we came in here, Calvin said, talk to him about the compost. And I didn't know how far I was supposed to go down that road, but apparently it's a road worth going down. Well, I learned the words compost and mulching when I was a little kid. My mother was great on mulching and using compost and stuff, but now it takes on a whole new meaning the way you guys do it.
Oh yeah, we got into composting 2 years ago. Basically, we got into a county program that got us started in it. Basically, because all our cropland goes into corn in the summer. We have no place to spread the manure in the summertime. So we used to pile it all in the summer, then spread it in the fall. But we don't have enough acres to spread all the manure on. So we went into the composting, got into the composting, and it's worked out great. I take from a local farm down here, Sunny Hill, we take all their horse manure. We mix the horse manure with the cow manure and put it in windrows, and it's all turned once a week once it starts cooking, and works out well. The compost has been real good. There's nothing I don't think we could make a living on, but it's a good sideline off the farm. We sell the compost to local gardeners, and it's worked out well. Last year was a real good year. We started bagging it last year and turned out real well.
You have a machine that bags it?
Well, we have a machine that runs on boy power.
I knew she was going to say that.
It's what it was a potato bagger that we converted to a compost bagger, and it's a labor intensive. In other words, there's a spot on each part of the machine for one of the boys, and they have to be there to run it, and they know that they're needed, and because of that, they get a percentage of the bag market. And that gives them an incentive and a goal, and they're part of the business, and I think they learn a lot from it.
How old are your boys?
We have 4 boys. Andy's 12, Albert's 11, Alex is 10, and Adam is 8.
I'm going to get a bunch of A's, quadruple A's here.
Yep.
Well, just before we wrap up this discussion, I'm glad we came back to composting, because as you were talking, I have a very strange mind. And I was thinking of one of the funniest bumper stickers I've ever seen in my life. It was on a car, somebody driving into City Hall, downtown Plattsburgh, a couple years ago. 2 words, compost happens.
Oh, yeah.
Sure does.
And it happens better than the other stuff does.
I love it. Menards, thanks again for talking with us. Have a great life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later. Early March with snow on the ground, not a very welcome sight for farmers or anybody else, but we've been through so many things this winter, we don't care. Again, for those people who just might have tuned it in, we're at Bourdeau Brothers on the Ridge Road in Champlain. Pioneer Days, meeting farmers and farmers' representatives, and we do have a representative from Pioneer Feeds with us today, Dave
Costu.
Costu. I swore I'd remember, but I didn't. And you're all the way from Des Moines?
No, I'm not from Des Moines. I live in Clifton Park, New York,
Oh,
down
that's
by
better.
Albany. So, but we have another fellow that is from Des Moines.
Did you come up today, Dave?
Yeah, I came up this morning.
And the roads were
Roads were fine.
they?
Yeah, actually, it kind of felt like spring down towards Albany, but then once you move up here, the snow started coming. So,
How'd you get involved in this business?
well, I grew up working on a small farm back in Owego, New York, and ended up going to college for agriculture. And since I graduated from college in 1992, I've been involved in agricultural business.
Did you go to Cornell or where'd you go?
Yes, went to Cornell.
Yeah, I like it over there very, very much. I was introduced to Cornell when I was graduated from high school in 1955 and almost went there, but then thanks to a friend of ours, F. Thomas, who works at Miners and has been involved in the business for many years, sent a son there and he enjoyed his stay at Cornell. I just like the campus there.
No, it's a beautiful campus. It was a lot of fun. So
So and then you graduated toward this particular company. Is this your first job?
no, actually, this is the third company that I've worked for. But I've been with Pioneer now for about 3.5 years, and it's a fantastic company to be with.
And you spend a little time on the road, obviously.
Yeah, I cover Eastern New York and New England as a district sales manager, and I have 20 locations, 20 sales agencies that I work with throughout that sales area.
We were talking with a couple of farmers while you were having lunch over there. You did have lunch, didn't you?
Well, no, actually, I'm about to have lunch.
We'll try not to make this too long now. We're all licking our chops in here because Calvin told me the pancakes here were pretty good.
I know they're good.
So we're going to check that out. But I mean, we were talking with farmers a few minutes ago, and it's truly amazing how this business becomes more and more scientific as time goes on. It's not like the old days where there was only one or two different kinds of seed. Nowadays, you have many choices, and you better know what kind you're using.
Yeah, the industry has changed a lot, especially in the past 5 years. There's a lot of technologies, and biotechnology has led the way just recently with a lot of new products, such as insect-resistant corn hybrids, even herbicide-tolerant crops. That's been a big one over the past few years. So things are changing very quickly, and I think over the next 5 years we're going to see many more changes. And it could be from things like rootworm-resistant corn to high-oil corns and different. I think we're going to see more products that are specified for end-trait, end-user products. And again, over the past 5 years, many of these changes have taken place, and the industry is changing very rapidly because of that.
And Cornell leads the world in its in all of its wild testing and the things that it does in Geneva and various places. That there aren't very many people who have ever dug a spade into the earth who haven't heard of Cornell.
Yeah, Cornell does a lot of work, but industry is also doing an awful lot of work. Right now, there's more finances for research in industry than there is in the state colleges. But Cornell is doing an awful lot of work on looking at a lot of these new technologies and finding out whether they fit this region or not. And so it's good to have a land-grant university like Cornell backing up some of the research that we're doing.
Does this require continuing education on your part? Do you have to go to schools and seminars?
Yeah, the company does a lot to keep us up to date on the things that are changing, and also a lot of people in the industry are what's called certified crop advisors, and that's basically continuous schooling on a yearly basis to continue to stay abreast of the new things in agriculture. And you need to get a certain amount of credits in order to be in the status of a certified crop advisor. So.
And as we said before, with interviewing our first farm family, the Menards, who live nearby Moores, it behooves the farmers to get a little education too, to attend events like this and talk to experts such as yourself, but to pay attention to what's going on, otherwise they're not going to make it.
Yeah, just like anything, I mean, farming probably over the past 10 or 15 years has really, it's become a real intense business, and with the margins that people are getting today, there's not a lot left at the end, and you really need to do everything you can to become efficient and to become good managers and make sure every dollar that you spend counts and make sure that you're doing things that add value to the farm so that you can be profitable. And I'd say that the farmers that I see that are the most successful are ones that are fine-tuning every aspect of their operation. And these are some of the smartest people in the world that we're dealing with, and some of the best business people are these farmers today.
You know, it just dawns on me as you were saying that, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the most common pieces of farm equipment in coming years is the computer.
More and more farms are getting computers, and I'm really amazed at the farm offices that are going up nowadays and seeing the types of computer systems that are going in, and the level probably, and it's probably just been over the past 5 years, the level at which a lot of these farmers are really using computers, and that's just part of keeping up to date, using the newest technology to fine-tune their dairy operations or grain operations or whatever it might be. A computer is something that can generate and store a lot of information that can tell a farmer, really monitoring progress, monitoring feed systems. There's millions of things that a farmer can do with it, and that's just another tool that they're using to make sure that they're doing everything they can to become more profitable.
That's great. Dave, thanks so much for coming here today.
Okay.
Have a great life in Clifton Park.
Okay, thanks for the time. Yeah.
Well, there's two things I have to say before I say anything else, and Calvin reminded me that Bourdeau Brothers is not on the Ridge Road. He lives on the Ridge Road. This is the Mason Road, which is, about 5 miles away, Calvin, from where you live. But I'm glad to be here, and I apologize for that mistake, as I spent most of my life down around the Plattsburgh area and are just now getting acquainted with the countryside if I don't take a nap when Calvin takes me around. The second thing is the food we just consumed. You know, in real time, you didn't get to see that because we can't show obscene things like Calvin and Gordy eat as they get into pancakes during the lunch hour. We had the best pancakes and maple syrup and link sausages and fried eggs and real butter and milk, and oh my goodness. And then I heard Calvin say, we're going to have to do the rest of the show sitting right here at the table because I can't get up. Can you? I'd like to introduce our viewers to Gary Thomas from Des Moines, Iowa. How are you?
Doing fine. Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. When did you arrive?
Been in New York since Monday. Been traveling with their district sales managers, and today I'm with the local district sales manager for this area.
It doesn't sound like an Iowa accent. You're
No, it
going to have
isn't.
to fill me in a little bit here, Gary.
I'm originally from Virginia, and then spent last 7 or 8 years down in Alabama, and just moved to Iowa in September. So I'm a new Midwesterner.
So you got a mixture of about 7 accents.
Just
there.
about.
That's wonderful. Virginia. Where in Virginia?
Down in the Petersburg area, Central Virginia.
Born and brought up there?
Yes, sir. Born and brought up there. Just moved to Alabama in 1990, and just moved to Iowa. So.
Well, what do you think of Des Moines so far?
It's been a very mild winter, and we've had very little snow and not too many cold temperatures, so it's been very pleasant.
Our winter, like the winters of so many people who keep mentioning that strange name El Nino, has been absolutely bizarre. Some of us are not so affected by it, although, as I'm sure you heard, we had a massive ice storm, the worst in 100 years. And I hear these farmers here today talking about the damages that they suffered because of it, and you hate to see it when these people work so hard for a living, you know.
Well, particularly for the dairymen, when they've got to milk those cows and don't have power to do it, it's you can't feed them, you can't milk them, you can't do anything without power anymore. So it really puts a strain on their on their farm operations.
So you've been learning a little bit about how the New York farmers do business this week, huh?
Yes, sir. Traveling around, seeing some of the countryside, and meeting some dealers and some growers. It's been a good week.
Had you spent any time in New York at all before?
This is my first trip, so we're having a good time.
What was different from northern New York than you might have expected?
Not anything that I've seen so far. The geography is a lot like some parts of Pennsylvania, some parts of Virginia, and the agriculture is in pockets, just like it is in those states also. So a lot of dairies, a lot of grain farmers, good mix. So.
You know, we've been talking with some of the farmers and with others of the regional representatives today, and what we've learned is that farming has changed drastically over the last 5 years, but tremendously over the last 30 or 40 years, and the variety of things that different kinds of seeds that the farmer has an option of using. But what we've also learned is the farmer better get up early in the morning and do a little studying about what's right for his climate, for his kind of ground, and so on, and that's where a guy like you comes in, so you can explain the different varieties.
Well, the industry is getting very, very complex. Technology is really creating some unknowns for a lot of folks. Biotechnology in the seed business is the new complex that folks will have to deal with, and you're right, it's going to take a lot more study, a lot more finding out exactly what will work best on their acres and what they need. There's some technologies that a lot of farmers don't need, but everybody wants to experiment with the new seed and just see how it works on their farm. So.
Is that why, Calvin and I were discussing this at lunch, is that why some of the hybrids only last a very short time?
Well, the whole purpose of companies like Pioneer is to produce better yielding varieties and hybrids each year. We're releasing 38 new hybrids across North America just in 1998 alone, and a projected of about 60 new hybrids next year. So we're trying to turn the products over very, very quickly, but the thing farmers raise corn for is for tons of silage or for bushels of grain. So you're always interested in trying to get the best yielding varieties possible, and then you put the biotechnology in there to give them the traits that they're important to them also.
Well, the bottom line is the end product then.
That's exactly right. We want to produce more milk off that acre, or more beef if you're raising beef, or more bushels of grain if you're selling it as a grain farmer.
Now let me just get a little bit more of the technical aspect of your education. Did you go to college before getting into this?
Yes. In Virginia, of course, the land-grant university there is Virginia Tech, and I have both a bachelor's and a master's degree from Virginia Tech.
That's great. Well, you didn't major in linguistics there, though, huh?
No, I didn't.
Well, you should have. That's the best accent I've ever heard. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy your stay in New York and come back see us in the summertime.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
I appreciate your hospitality.
Well, we got all the pioneers here. Calvin's the only one with a good beard. I understand after the last program people kidded about it, but what he needs is a good pair of suspenders, don't you? Don't you wish I could turn the camera on him?
He's getting there. He's getting there.
To hold his pants up there?
Yes.
Especially after that meal we had, boy. Mine are getting down there about half-mast.
Yeah, it was a delicious meal. Too much of it.
Unlike the old days with Art Linklater, kids say the darndest things, where parents used to tell the kids to do certain things when they got on TV. My wife always tells me, pull your pants up. I can see your whole belly. I'm sorry, Joe LeDuc. I can't hold it in anymore.
We're all getting that way, so don't feel bad.
Hey, are we having fun here yet today?
Why, yes.
Good bunch of people here.
Good bunch of people, yeah. It's a yearly affair. We come here every year about this time. Have a good meal. Try to win the door prize, which I very seldom do.
I got my name in there. I don't know what I'm going to win. Mailbox, right?
Mailbox, yeah.
That's the neatest mailbox I ever saw in my life.
Yep, a mailbox or a John Deere tractor, but they didn't tell us what size.
Oh. You don't know if it's big enough to tow something down through the fields this time of year.
That's right. Be in for a surprise.
Joe, have you been a farmer around here for years? Or?
Yeah, I bought the farm that I'm on now since 1969.
A little bit of water over the dam since 1969.
I farmed it all my life. I came in this country when I was 14 years old, and I've always worked on the farm.
I'll tell you one thing. I bet you didn't come from Virginia like the last guy did.
No.
He had a southern accent, and I know where yours is
Yes,
from.
yes,
so-
yes. Very, very hard to hide.
How did you happen to come over here and settle down?
When I was living in Canada, I always looked south. That was my dream, to come in the United States. And my dream came true.
You just got across the border and you kind of liked it right here.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Where's your farm located?
Right here, about half a mile from over here.
Oh.
On the Leggett Road, Champlain.
You didn't have far to come for lunch today.
No. I'm here often.
And I'm sure you know just about everybody in this room.
Just about. Yep.
Yeah, we were talking a little while ago about how much farming has changed.
Yeah.
And since you said you got in the business in 69?
69 with 48 cows, and we, I believe in 75 we went to 75 cows. I think in 1981 we went to 100 cows, and in 90 we took the plunge.
Oh no.
We went from tie stall to free stall, 200 cows, and in October of 92 we lost everything. Fire destroyed everything.
Oh, come on.
Yeah?
You're breaking my heart, Joe.
I know. That's life, I guess. But we didn't give up. We rebuilt for a 400 cow setup. 2 sons and myself.
That's a pretty big time operation.
It is, yeah.
So far cry from 45.
But today, I guess 400 is not considered extra large.
Like somebody told me we have a farm somewhere in Peru with how many?
1,000.
I can't even conceive of that.
There is one in Peru and there is one in Malone. The Poopaw boys in Malone, I believe they're milking around 1,100 to 1,200. Yeah.
Oh.
But it's an operation that's been in the family for years and years.
Well, you know, it's got to be done a little bit differently these days than it was when you started, especially if you're talking 400 cows. When
Definitely.
you say freestall, what does that mean?
They're running loose in the barn, and they're milked with a parlor.
I think I know what a parlor is, but it's a little different than it used to be milking them the way we used to way back when.
Definitely. Big change. We're milking them between the 2 hind legs right now compared to herringbone, what they call a parallel. You milk them between the 2 hind legs.
No, yeah, I learned that today. I had no idea.
Yes.
And the cows get used to it.
It's been in the market for about 10 years. I believe the parallel parlor, 10, 12 years. I think Dutch Rover started with one, and Charlie Ashley, and down the line.
Were you affected by the ice storm? Everybody was to some extent.
Not too seriously. We only lost our power for 3 days. The first 24 hours were hard because we didn't own a generator, and the cow being used to be milked 3 times a day. It was hard on them.
Oh, 3 times a day. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we milked 3 times a day.
Why 3 times a day? Is that better?
Well, if you have over 100 cows, it's a lot easier on you.
Yeah, I never would have known that.
Oh yeah.
But how?
Because the first cow, for instance, that got milked this morning might be the last one tonight. They'll come in a parlor, and she'll be like 13, 14 hours between milking, and it's actually too hard on her.
Now tell me, do the cows have to be trained to go into the parlor? Or how does that work?
Oh, well, a new system, it usually takes them 3-4 days to get used to it.
That's all.
Yeah, and some of them never get used to it.
Really? I know a few old cows that never got used to me milking them, boy. They hated me when they saw me come in the barn.
Our replacement, if we do buy quite a lot of replacement, we usually try to buy first calf heifer because it's so much easier to train them. A first calf heifer, within a day or 2, they'll go in by themselves.
I'm sure a lot of our viewers have no idea how a modern farm operates. One of these days, I know Calvin's done it many times before, but one of these days we're going to get right inside and show the pictures to the people, because I know a lot of people who live in the cities around here have no idea how it works.
That's right.
They have no idea how hard a farmer has to work to make a living.
That's for sure. It'd be a good education for them, especially the kid.
Yeah, especially the young people. We've already met the Menard family from Moores. They got 4 sons, and all 4 of their sons are helping them on the farm.
Yes. It's
It's still farming, still a family business.
It almost has to be. But the hired help situation today is very hard to hire good help.
Now, did you tell me how to go out and buy a generator? How did you finally get out of your
I
mess
did buy
there?
one. I did buy. Well, this fellow right here, I believe it was the next day, he brought 4 in the area. Very good thing he did, because we were getting pretty desperate. So I'd like to thank Mr. Bourdeau for bringing one across. It was a great help.
That's great. Well, farmers are survivors. If they're
Wow.
nothing else, they're survivors. If you've been through
We try.
a massive fire and an
Yes,
ice
yes,
storm and
yes,
God
yes.
knows what all the things, and you made it from 1969 to 1998, I guess you're going to be around for a while.
This ice storm was nothing compared to the fire.
No. Well, we talked to another gentleman when we had a special meeting at the VFW about a week ago, far more than that, when this show's going to be aired, but they honored fire departments and volunteers and things, and we interviewed another gentleman who was in Florida, and his house burned down. He came back to that, plus the ice storm, and
Yes.
it's got to be something. You can't describe how that feels, can you?
There is one thing about the North Country, we do stick together in crisis.
I'm glad you brought that up, because as I remember in that interview, I said, "What'd you do today?" He said there was 20 people in there sheetrocking today and trying to renovate an old house so his family could live in.
That's right. Oh, yeah. It's amazing. You
People are wonderful
don't
up
even
here.
stop to realize.
That's great.
Yeah.
Joe, thanks for stopping
Nice
by
talking to
today.
you.
Glad you had a good lunch.
Thank you.
See you later. Well, you know, we've been kind of busy since we got here, but we haven't been half as busy as this guy you're looking at right next to me. He's been busy talking to farmers and talking to representatives and even put a few pancakes away. Jermaine? Bourdeau.
Yes, that's
How are
correct.
you?
Fine, great.
Thanks so much for allowing us to come here today. We've had a ball, not to mention the lunch was worth the trip, baby.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you here. We enjoy doing our Pioneer Days. It's 3 days. We do this on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. Gives us a chance to get our customers in here, you know, and sit down and discuss their needs for the coming year. Chance to kind of maybe feed them and thank them for their business, you know, and then we enjoy doing it. And we enjoy having you here,
We
too.
just talked to a guy that was very grateful for some generators around the time the ice storm came along.
Well, we were fortunate across the water. There was some extra generators available, and we were able to move them here on this side where some of the guys are without power and no access to generators, and we did that to help, yes.
How long have you done this thing? More than once, I know, because Calvin said he enjoyed a few meals, he and Mr. Bob Venn.
This makes at least 10 or 11 years that we've been doing this. So, you know, it's not new for us, and the customer looks forward to coming in and just having some pancakes, visiting with their neighbors, you know, or sales reps, or, you know, and just sitting down talking about their needs. Yeah, it's been
You got
great.
half your staff in there cooking.
Well, that's right. We just utilize our workshop here to put on Pioneer Days. We utilize our people to do the cooking and to help serve, and it's been good. Great. Everybody works hard, and it works really well.
No, I think it shows that farming is a team effort. We've talked about farmers having their families help them on the family farm, but it's very nice when farmers can come in here for 2 or 3 days, like going to the fair, talk to other farmers like themselves, exchange horror stories about what bad weather can do in the ice storm, and realize that there are other people doing the same things you're doing every day of their lives.
Right.
You know?
Well, one nice thing about doing it here in our shop and doing it for 3 days in a row is that we got plenty of space. You know, we let the farmers bring their wives in, bring the children in, bring the hired help in, a friend if they choose to, you know, and we could just sit down and just visit and talk about the ice storms, or, you know, just bad lucks or good lucks, whatever's there. You know?
You may have to bring me back every year. I noticed most of the other eating at least within 50 feet of where I was stopped so they could watch me. So I'm kind of a spectacle when I start putting away pancakes and sausage. That was mighty fine meal. That was really great.
Well, they do a good job, and you know, cooking them, and they are kind of tasty, you know, and especially the sausage. For whatever reason, everybody always compliments how good the sausages are, you
It
know.
was good. I think they put a few, maybe a half a dozen extra on Calvin's plate and mine. So we may be talking about this for a long time to come. Jermaine, how did you start in this business?
Well, basically, my brother and I bought a feed business in Champlain, Vermont in 1974. And, you know, it grew from, you know, one truck and one employee. to at a point where we needed to expand. And in 1980, when we got ready to build a fertilizer plant, when I looked at, over there in Franklin County, Vermont, there was already 3 existing fertilizer plants. And I came over on this side, which we were always selling some people's like Joe LeDuc, and we were selling people like Rover's Farm and some of the others. And on this side at that time, there was somewhat between 200 and 300 operating dairy farms in the early 1980s, and there was no fertilizer blend plant here. So this looked like a good opportunity to come over here and build a plant, and and then I think the service was welcome here also.
Boy, I don't know if we should even mention the number of operating farms there are these days. These guys are working hard, doing everything they can to stay in business, but it breaks our hearts. Calvin and I have talked about this at the fairs, and it breaks our hearts to see the family farms, some of them, they'd have to fold.
Well, there's no question that we've lost a lot of farm numbers, and I'm afraid to say that farm number might keep on falling, as there doesn't seem to be a break in the price of milk in the right near future. And a volume,
not a big one anyway.
Not a big one, that's right. And volume is going to be a major role. I mean, the large farms can survive if they do it efficiently, but the small one, I'm afraid, with the cost of living and equipment and property taxes, energies, and all the other costs, is that it's very difficult with today's price of milk. I was reading an article the other day where we're getting the same price for our milk today as we did in 1980. And we all know how much our costs have changed.
Yeah, we've talked a great deal about that, and hopefully there'll be some minor changes, but whether it'll be enough to bring those people that are struggling now back, I don't know. That brings me to another topic, and that is the kind of business you're in. What amazed me, and I've been kind of disconnected from agriculture for a lot of years, not having been in the business since the 1950s. When I worked on a farm growing up and learned all those childhood lessons that you can only learn on a farm.
That's right.
But what amazes me is the choices that a farmer has today. And then some of the farmers we've interviewed on our program so far, they better be good students. They better be studying about different kinds of seeds and feeds and fertilizers these days to know what's best.
Well, there's no question that to be successful here as a dairy farmer or even a cash cropper, that it takes some special knowledge. The people want to be capable of taking care of details. Details makes money. And I think people need to be able to pick out the variety they need for silage, the variety they need for grains, the varieties that will do well in their soil based on other people's test plots results, and also knowing which different chemicals will work on different weed species, and all those become quite important. So we're there to help if whenever we can, to help identify some of those problems and help the farmer make a decision. And that's why days like Pioneer Days work so well, because we have time, the farmer has time, and we can sit down and talk about these needs. And a lot of times, I know once in a while somebody waits here to see someone, but you get talking about a man's total needs, for the whole year, and he's going to spend a whole bunch of money. That decision doesn't always get made in 5 or 10 minutes.
But the best part of it is I don't see anybody that's impatient. They're having so much fun moving that fork up and down and meeting their neighbors.
Well,
just some of these people don't get to see each other but a few times a year.
Well, that's one of the comments you hear a lot, is that I see you more here than I see you at home, and that's it's great that the guys have time to visit with their neighbors, and they can share information, talk about the ice storm or different things they're doing on their own farms, which has been rewarding for them.
We've always talked about the farmers being independent, but nowadays that sharing is getting more important than ever. Sharing the knowledge, the technology, the ideas, not only with people like you but with others. And we mentioned before how much more common the computer is.
Right, very much so.
In the office of a farm, because we're talking real business here.
Right. Well, there's many of the farmers today, they, record everything into their computers in their homes, and whether it's, milk production, crops information, yields in the fields, there's a lot of things that get stored in that computer, and it's at that farmer's fingertip, whenever he's ready to make that next decision again.
How did the old-fashioned farmers keep that all in their heads? I don't know that.
Well, back then it was on a much smaller scale. and that's what made a difference, And I think today it's much more high tech, I mean, it's a much faster lane, we're traveling at a much faster rate than we ever have, and we just have to be a little bit sharper to be successful in this business.
You had a guy like Joe LeDuc who lost his entire farm to fire and start all over again. And
yeah, but not once. Joe's, his, fire was twice, right? He lost 2 barns to a fire. If you remember that, he lost his stanchion barn, and I think it was like within 24 months after he built his new freestall barn, it burned again, So, Joe's been one of the hardcores, and he's an excellent neighbor to have here, been an excellent customer, and we think the world of Joe,
Well, ever since that generator, boy, he thinks the world of you, too. That ice storm was tough. Did it affect your business here at all?
Well, indirectly it's going to, because it's going to affect our customers, so it's going to have some sort of impact on us before it's all done. It's a time of year when this happened and when it was slow for us, so we had some people around that was available to help others, and we had the equipment to move the generators from farm to farm, and we were glad to do that.
That's what I'm hearing more and more of. We never could have survived without people like you and others, and we had a meeting to salute the firemen and the people who ran shelters last week, and it's amazing how people get together.
Well, I'll give you a small example. I have a friend of mine up in Canada, just across the border, who called me on a Sunday morning and said, Jermaine, we're here at the shelter, and he says our generator just blew up, and we have just a building full of people, and we have no electricity. He said, there's no available generator up here. He says, do you know where I could find one in the States? And fortunately, I should say, the night before, one guy returned one that was available, and I said, well, we have an extra one that came back last night, and I said, I'll run it over there. I'll be there in about 30 minutes, So we just loaded it in the pickup truck, and we took it over there and helped them get it set up as far as the power end of it, And within 1 hour, there was power in that building, And God, when you walked in there, everybody was clapping, and they were wanting to give you coffee and soup, and they just wanted to feed you. They were all so tickled. But there was a lot of people that were starting to shiver, older people, a lot of children that was in there, and they were laying down on the cots and the beds everywhere, and the temperature had already fallen because it happened to be one of the colder days, So it was good feeling to be able to help some people.
It's got to be, but that's the way the North Country is, and that's why I've stayed here through all the ice storms and the snowstorms.
Right.
That's why, now I know why we're here, because spring looks so good when it finally arrives.
Yes, it does. That's right. It does, very much so.
I'm afraid the fields are going to be a little wet for a while this year, though.
It looks like it's wet now, but if we really look back at our winter, it's been a long winter. Snow came, I think, the later part of October, and it's actually never left. So we've had snow, and we've had, that ice storm, which kind of made our winter much longer than normal, and I think, spring will be very welcome.
I think so, too. Thanks again for having us here, Jermaine.
It's our pleasure to have you. Please come back again next year, because we plan on being here.
Okay. I'll see if I can talk for a couple of minutes here without choking to death. If you see that I got tears in my eyes, it's not from these sad stories that Joe Giroux has been telling me, although he's told me a few stories down through the years, but it's just because I got something caught in my throat there. Joe Giroux, how are you, buddy?
Fine. Yourself, Gordy?
I'm doing great. I was just talking with Calvin a little while ago, as I always do, when nobody else will talk to me. And I was saying, in the old days, if I had a story that pertained to farmers, I knew who I'd always call first, because he was always good for a few thousand words. And that
right.
was Joe, but I want you to know I appreciate all those times.
Thank you.
You've always been an outspoken person on behalf of the farmers here in the North Country, because you've done it for years.
Yep, I've tried.
Worked very hard. You were president of the Farm Bureau for how long?
On and off for a few years, yeah. Was on for 4 or 5 years, then came off for a while, was on for another 2 or 3 years, yep. Giving that up now.
Then he decided to become a Clinton County legislator. Is that a little different tack for you? You've been attached to politics by virtue of your other duties for years, but this is a little bit different.
Yeah, it certainly is. It shows you the insides. It's been very interesting. I'm not sorry that I ever done this, and what happened in the last few months makes it even more important that I was a legislator to try to help these people out.
You and I were just talking about that, and we've already told many stories on this program about the ice storm, but there are some more about people helping people that you'd like to talk about. Let's talk about that fuel business you were just telling me a minute ago.
Yeah, we supplied fuel for, hopefully all the farmers in the Clinton County that had a generator for a number of days they were on, and were able to pick up monies from the county. Gave me a vehicle to charge this fuel, and hopefully FEMA will pick up the rest of the cost. But we had JCO give us $10,000. Catholic Charities gave $10,000 and has offered more if we need it. Just for the fuel program. That doesn't include the other programs where Neutrino gave $50,000 and Catholic Charities another $37,000. So we're already $87,500 there for just money that farmers got. I'm sure, Bob, you've probably got some of that too.
This is money that came from this area, right?
Right. Well, Neutrino really is a company that's based from this area. It's our feed company, and they decided they were going to give $50,000 to help the farmers, and that was a great thought on their part.
So it was, once again, it made you feel good to be a part of that, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Well, I mean, I didn't realize till about the third day in the storm, and me and Bob were just talking about that, saying that there was nobody helping out there. And I didn't realize that because I had my own troubles at the time. I wasn't worried about the neighbors. I was worried about my own.
As everybody was,
Yeah.
but this was a kind of a storm that the full impact wasn't predicted. So after about 2 days, we were all hoping it was going to be over, and
But it wasn't.
suddenly it wasn't.
Because you kept calling the NYSEC company and said, how many more days do you figure we'll be without power? And he kept saying 7 to 10 at least, maybe 2 weeks. Then that makes you think, boy, that makes you go into high gear. But I was fortunate. I was one of the few farmers. I was only out of electricity for 3 days, and that gave me a vehicle to help other people. Otherwise than that, I would have been stuck at home, because when you had to run a generator, and Bob will tell you, it takes all your time. But in the first few days, we didn't have our own, so we had to go borrow one from a neighbor, milk our cows, and then go back and milk his. So it was a long day.
You know, it takes its toll on you psychologically after about a week of that stuff.
Oh, the first day did it.
You were gone the first day.
Reality hits you. You're going to say, well, how are you going to keep this farm going? And that's what really hits, is how you keep the farm going. Is that when you keep calling NYSEC for a couple hours and they keep saying 2 weeks, reality sits in really fast.
You know, it's really bad when people do have severe losses, and there were severe losses not only here in Clinton County, but the poor folks north of the border.
Yep.
Tremendous losses. But what amazes me, one of the big stories is how many people survive by working, like you said, day and night to help themselves and their neighbors.
And their neighbors, yep.
And they're bouncing back already.
Yep. Oh yeah, it was. We used to talk the first few days of the storm was, farmers will take months to get over this, but I think farmers have rebounded really well from this. Most of them. There's some that had harder luck than others. We understand that. But I think most farmers have come back real well, and production is pretty much back. We had losses that we didn't want, but we have those on normal days some days. So, no, I think overall we did quite well. I'm trying to be optimistic here because too many people have been pessimistic during this time, and we got to move on now, that's all.
It's time for the next chapter, like the editorial said in the paper.
Yep.
It's wonderful to talk about. They'll never be able to stop us because just since we've been here today, I've heard about 15 new stories about this ice storm, and I think it's a healthy part of the healing process to talk about what you went through.
Yep. Because I think, because a lot of outreach work was done with these farmers. Any farmers who still have any problems that need assistance in any way, there's still the hotline to call. You know, you can still call the fire control center and saying whatever, whether it's psychological help. There's some people that won't pull out of this right away. So, you know, those vehicles are still there for those people. So,
you know, Joe's been a friend of mine for a long, long time. After today, that may change because his made his entire lunch get cold here during this interview. He may have to trade in those sausages or spray them with polyurethane and keep it on his mantle. But get to your meal. I want to talk to Bob over here. Let me just come across here. What's your last name, Bob?
Gravel.
Brad, glad to have you here today. How do you know this guy across the table from you?
Oh, I've known Joe, I don't know how long. Joe's uncle, Roger Drew, the poultry farmer on 9, and I've been best friends for many, many years. And I used to see Joe down around there once in a while.
I pulled up to this table. I couldn't get very close after eating that lunch, but I pulled up as close as I could. I said to Bob, how you doing? He said, oh, well, not quite as good as I was 50 years ago, but not so bad.
Right.
Where do you live?
Shazy Landing.
You have a farm over there?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your farm.
Oh, it's just a small farm. We milk about 50 and we got 100 head altogether. My nephew's on the farm with me. He does most of the work. And,
It's hard to survive, isn't it, as a farmer these days?
I think it is. It always has been, but we're just getting older and we realize it now.
The bones ache a little more when you get up in the morning. That's all there is to that, huh?
It's been a tough go the last few years for farmers. Not only the weather, but the prices, and it's just not. I don't think many are recommending that their sons go into it.
But you know what? Every year it amazes me when sons do go into it. I mean, we talked to one family that their 4 boys work with them on the farm. And they're farmers today because their fathers and their grandfathers and their great-grandfathers were farmers. And they know they aren't going to get rich the first time they pick up a pitchfork or milk those cows, but they're in that business because it's in their blood, and they know it's the most honest way to make a living on the face of the earth.
Well, I got 2 boys, and one of them never liked to farm. He's teaching school down there in New York City and coaching basketball there. And the other one's working at Wyeth Harris. And when I see what they make, I'm glad I never tried to talk him into farming, because just the benefits are more than we make.
But once again, as we've mentioned on this program many times, and today, since we've been up here for Pioneer Days 3 or 4 times, you do what you do in life because you like to do it. And if you've got a passion for farming, then damn it, farm.
But you know, one thing I've noticed, I came back from the service in '55 and started farming. And in 1955, the church dinners were at night, 7:30 or 8 o'clock, so the farmers could make them. And things at school, the basketball games were 7:30. Now those dinners are all 5 o'clock. The basketball games are 5:30. So if you got children, you either got to neglect your farm work or neglect your children. You just can't do both.
You know, that's something I haven't even thought about until you just mentioned that. It seems like I spent a large segment of my life, as Calvin has and many of us have, who've had families, in gyms and in hockey rinks and various other arenas and venues where kids played sports. But many of those events, not only 5 o'clock, but some of them start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just when the farmer's getting cranked up for chores.
Well, Calvin's brother and I don't know how many years ago, we were in the barber shop in Ross's Point, and we got talking, and we started an elementary league for basketball. And I guess it's still going. And for years, Saturday morning, hurry through the chores and go with the kids. But I know my nephew was on the farm. The other night, his son had a Cub Scout banquet, 5 o'clock. Couldn't go. You really can't do it the way the society is today.
Life is one big juggling match, that's what it is. And
the older you get, the less you can juggle.
Sometimes all the objects don't hit the same hand when they come down, right, Rob?
Right.
Thanks for talking with us today. Have a great day.
Yep, thank you.
You too, Joseph.
Yep, you do.
I'm a small eater. I'm my own cook now.
I told you Joe Giroux wasn't going to be very happy with me for making his dinner get cold. I haven't got up yet, so it's really cold, but he's still putting it down pretty good over there. Bob, I got back to you it's the Bob story chapter 2. That's what we're doing today, because we heard a little more about what happened to you during the ice storm, and I knew you wanted to thank some people.
Well, we were really without a generator, and Paul Laurent came down 9:30 at night and got us milk and the barn clean. And then he came back the next night and did it again. And he really bailed us out. And by then we got one in from Pennsylvania and we could handle it. But he really, he had 2 farms of his own to take care of, and he came down and helped us out.
You know, as we've said before on our program today so many times, a farmer works hard enough on a regular basis. You get a disaster like this and he barely I know a lot of people who didn't go to bed for 2 or 3 days.
Oh yeah, my nephew was up just about first 48 hours, but I can't take that anymore. Too old for that.
How big a generator does it take to run the equipment you need to do milking?
Well, it had to be a 45,000, huh, Joe?
Yeah, that could be, yeah.
45,000 at least. And
That's not one you can pick up and throw in the back of a pickup truck.
no, can't pick them up.
Unless you're Joe Giroux or somebody, you know.
But we leased one out of Pennsylvania, and a self-contained unit, and they brought that up. But Paul bailed us out, and we'll always be grateful to him for that, because he had enough of his own problems.
That's what happens. Sometimes helping other people makes your problem seem just a little bit smaller, especially when you can share it. And I'm glad we took time to do that with you. Thanks a lot, Bobby.
Thank you, Gordy.
I'll tell you, I feel like I'm going to school today. I am learning so much during the pioneer days of Bourdeau Brothers up here in the Mason Road in Champlain. And I've been watching this lady work for the last couple hours, and she has been so busy. It's Joyce Otis, right?
Soltis.
Otis?
Yes.
And where are you from, Joyce?
I live in Saratoga Springs.
Well, you didn't have very far up the North Way to go this morning?
About 2.5 hours.
And the mountains weren't too bad?
No. Not compared to how they have been earlier this season. So
What was it, last Tuesday? It was a nightmare drive for me to go to Albany and back. Tuesday in the morning when the snow started, it was just greasy enough to be miserable, and coming back at 5:30 at night. I like to erase days like that from my memory.
I was up here last Tuesday. They had the Corn Congress at Minor Institute.
Oh my.
So yes, I was okay when I came up. When I left, I went over to Burlington, and it was, you're right, it was snowing.
What is that Corn Congress all about? I was in the radio business for many years, and I talked about it, and I would interview Ev Thomas and various people from miners, and never knew really what it was all about.
Well, they hold several of them across New York State. There's one in Western New York, which I haven't been to, but Ev and Minor, I guess, sponsor this one up here every year. It's generally the end of February, and it's a seminar for the local farmers. The agenda and the topics will change year to year. You know, sometimes it has to do with the dairy industry and feeds and forages, and then what's new in the cropping end of it also.
It's a busy area we live in, and even busier. One of the main topics of conversation today has been this plagued ice storm that we all want to put behind us. But
I've discussed that with many people.
But it's a part of the picture, I guess, and people want to talk about it. So we do talk about it.
Yes, you're right. That's been the main topic here today.
Now, you work for a company called Novartis.
That's correct.
Tell me how you got involved in this field in the first place.
Well, I was an agriculture major in college, and like anything else, you come out and you start to interview with various companies, and I got a job. It was then Ciba Geigy, and then Ciba Plant Protection, and last year we merged with Sandoz, and they created a new name, which would be Novartis Life Sciences, and we have a pharmaceutical division, a nutrition division, and then the agribusiness unit, which I'm part of.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Colorado State in Fort Collins, Colorado, to the ag school.
Are you originally from New York State? Or?
Yes, I am, from downstate.
And how did you happen to choose?
Probably I think you grow up in one coast, in one area, and I wanted to see another part of the country and was interested in the type of agriculture out there, and it's mostly beef production, and at the time that's what I was interested in. So I probably chose the college where there were strong courses in beef production.
But guess what? After that little adventure, you came back home.
Right, eventually. I was out there about 6 years.
Oh, you were?
Mm-hmm. So, well, you go where the jobs are. It's that simple.
Boy, I tell you, that's the bottom line. We've been talking with a lot of farmers today, and we don't know in interviewing these farmers how they manage to survive year after year, but they do. And not only that, farmers have to be pretty bright in so many different fields to survive these days. They have to understand the technology or meet people like you who knows what it's all about.
Yes, they have to be experts in many fields, especially if they're in the dairy industry plus raising crops. Many things involved, and they have to be good business managers, or they're not going to be around. It's a tough field.
Everywhere I look, I see that got milk symbol. What did we ever do before we had that little?
I don't know. That got stuck on there last week. I was at a open house and the Dairy Princess was there, so she came around and put them everywhere. So
what kinds of products does your company sell?
in this part of the country, it's mostly herbicides and fungicides. Herbicides would be on corn and soybeans up here, and then fungicides would be on the fruit and vegetable market.
Why are those things a necessary part of the picture?
In today's day and age, you really, in order to stay in business for the grower, he's got to get the highest production he can get and the quality, highest quality product. And these products help him do that.
Yeah,
Cut back on labor also, which is very important.
I can imagine it is. We've talked about these people who run family farms who just can't afford all that extra labor.
Mm-hmm. You're correct.
So
It's very difficult.
Whatever they can, and everyone to a man and woman today that we've interviewed, has said that it's the end product that counts. So if you can increase production, you got to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. It's true. You've got to be able to increase production, and then as you get into the fresh market products, your sweet corn and your apples and tomatoes, you've got to have quality, or you're not going to sell it.
Joyce, thanks for making that short trip up the Northway.
Well, you're very welcome. Have a nice day.
Are you going back tonight?
No, I'm going over to Vermont.
Oh, good for you. Well, have a good few days.
Okay,
Thanks,
you.
Joyce. Our program continues from the Bourdeau Brothers on the Mason Road. I got it right now. I called it the Ridge Road when we first started. And I'd like to meet a gentleman whom I've just met for the first time. And I think I can almost say your first name right, Mr. Kaiser. Matthios?
Matthias.
Matthios? I can't quite get it, but close enough.
You're pretty close.
If I can't get it right, I'll just call you Matthew.
Okay.
Where do you live?
We live in Noyen. We farm in Noyen. And we came from Switzerland 22 years ago. And we have a dairy farm, but we also grow a cash crop, corn, soybeans. And we do a lot of business with Bourdeau Brothers. And we get a good service down here, so it pays to go across the border a bit.
Well, Calvin told me that he and the late Bob Venn went to the cheese factory and interviewed, I guess, your brother. Tell me about that.
Well, my brother runs a cheese factory just close to the farm. He processes about 25 to 30,000 pounds of milk a day. And he produces all kinds of Swiss cheese, French cheese.
We know there better be Swiss cheese.
And he's doing well. And all our milk, we milk 200 heads, and all our milk goes to my brother.
Does it really? Well, that's kind of a nice relationship, isn't it?
Good relationship.
You don't have to truck it very far then, do you?
He trucks it himself. He gets it each day at the bulk tank. And he makes 5 days a week cheese, and then over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, we have to store it, and for Monday. So, no, we have a good relationship. That works very fine.
That's great. Calvin said your father was a most interesting person when he was interviewed. You had a small family farm in Switzerland before you came here?
Yeah, we had a small rented family farm. It was not ours. And my parents worked the farm for 20 years. On a rental base, and after 20 years they sold their livestock and machinery, and we moved over to Quebec.
That's amazing, just to see what life was going to be like in Canada, huh?
Well, it's a little bit different, but it's still the same farming. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work, and everywhere. So, but we were very comfortable in Quebec, and we were very comfortable that close to the border. We like the American people, we like the American lifestyle down here, and we just love it around here. good place to live.
This is kind of a fun thing to come down and meet all your fellow farmers and your friends. I'm glad they do this every year. It's the first time I've been here. Calvin's been here several times, and each one of us has had a lot of these pancakes to eat, so we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, actually, I came in yesterday already for breakfast, right after chores, and I have some parts to pick up today, so Champlain said, why you don't stay?
Good excuse, right? Some parts
Good
to pick
excuse,
up,
good excuse. Yeah. No, this is excellent. This is something they do for their customers, and it gives an excellent relationship. I think it's great.
It's great for people to get together and talk over the good things and the bad things, and they're a little bit of both. Hopefully there's more good than bad about farming. It's a great profession to be in. It's a lot of hard work, but there are certain rewards, aren't there?
It is. It is a good profession to be in. You also feel that you don't do things by yourself. There's somebody else in power over us who controls all these things, and it's a great relationship.
Boy, you got that right. That is for sure. It's a delight to have you down here today. I wanted, when I heard that you ran a small farm in Switzerland, when I say small, I seem to remember Calvin telling me something about 40 acres.
Yes, we had between 40 and 50 acres.
Far cry from what I bet you have today.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. We're operating about 1,900, 2,000 acres now.
Yeah, that's a little different from 40, 45 acres.
Yeah.
But, Switzerland's a small country.
It's a very small country, and even a 50-acre farm can be work for two families. You grow all kinds of crops, vegetables, fruits, and you can make a living for two families on a 50-acre farm. But it's a lot of hard work and diversified. You have cows, you have pigs, you have heifers, you have beef, you have everything on a 50-acre farm, and that's the way you can make it.
Farming is a lot of hard work in any country on the globe. You can't fool me. I know how hard farmers work. I'm delighted to have you down here today, and delighted that you decided to move to Canada and come down to see us every now and again.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words. And
say hello to your whole family. And I don't care if they've been to the cheese factory. I want to go back there myself sometime. I love cheese.
Yeah, okay. If you ever come up visit us, you're welcome, and we go and try to get some free cheese there.
I love it. Thanks again.
Okay, have a good afternoon.
Well, I think we got the classic interview of the day coming right up here. This is the one we've been waiting for, but the guy has managed to avoid us right up until this point in time. He wanted to make sure he digested some of his lunch. Dutch Rovers, how the heck are you?
Not too bad. And yourself?
I'm doing great. Have you been talking shop with anybody who'll sit down next to you today? I watched you at work.
Well, listen, there's a lot of people here with a lot of knowledge, so it's a good time to, find out what's new in the market, what's out there for chemicals, and, different products that are available for farmers, all to help to try and keep that cost down and keep food cheap in this country.
I've said it before today, but farmers have to get up pretty early in the morning, and more sense than just getting up to milk the cows. They've got to get up early just to study what's going on around out there so they can survive.
Well, that's it today. The cost of everything is going up, and the farm products are staying the same, or in some cases going down. So we've got to be competitive. And the only way to stay competitive is to know what's out there in the field, to be able to do the job, do a good job, and not, incur a lot of extra expenses to do that.
Dutch, many of our viewers have no idea where your farm is located. Tell us.
Our farm is located on the North Farm Road in Shazy, New York. It's right next to the ballpark. The land lays pretty much right around the farm.
Some pretty historical property around there.
Well, I don't know about that, but...
Been around for a long time. How long have you been on that farm?
We've been there since 1966. Before that, it was, the Neverett, the cattle dealers had that farm, and before that, miners had it. It was part of the old miner farm.
That's what I mean about historical. Very well-known piece of property over there.
Probably is, yeah.
And your reputation precedes you. I hear tell through the grapevine that You are one of the smartest and most successful, hardworking farmers in Clinton County.
I don't know anything about that, but we've managed to survive for 30 years anyway. So.
How? But how do you do it?
Oh, one of the ways, I guess, you have to, stay efficient. You have to, grow a little bit every year. Either your product has to go up in price a little every year. If it doesn't, you've got to get a little bit larger every year to survive. Is basically what it amounts to.
How big a farm? Give us an idea how big your farm is right now.
We're farming about 2,000 acres, run around 1,000 head of cattle. Right in there.
Does that ever scare you?
Oh, once in a while.
Not more than every other morning, right? You ever wake up and say, what am I doing here?
As you get older, you sometimes ask that question, I'm sure.
Yeah, even farmers can get philosophical sometimes, especially when they start getting hungry. But you seem to be caught up in the wave of the future. Did you ever dream way back when that you'd be this far right now?
No, I didn't. You've always got to set your horizons high enough because you can achieve those goals. I always said I'd like to own 1,000 acres of land and maybe milk a couple hundred cows, and I've passed that. But I've also had to pass that to survive. So you do what you have to do to survive.
Very interesting philosophies I've learned today from different farmers, depending on what their experience has been. And I still, for the life of me, don't know how you decide that you're going to be that big.
You don't.
It just kind of gets there, huh?
You kind of get there. I mean, if you're putting in a new milking parlor and you're milking 150 cows, you obviously can't justify the price of a new milking parlor for 150 cows. So that automatically says you need to be 250 or 350, wherever the numbers are right. Because if the debt load per cow is higher than what you can manage to pay, I mean, you shouldn't go into it.
It also proves to me that a successful farmer has to be a businessman.
Yeah, right. Farming today is a business. It can still be a way of life, but it has to be treated as a business. And every business is that way today.
Give us an idea of how many people it takes to run a farm the size of yours.
Oh, probably 8 or 9 employees altogether, self included, my son, my wife. Don't forget the banker.
Oh boy, the banker, he probably comes for supper every Sunday night, I'll tell you that. As I've said once before in this program, life is a kind of a juggling match sometimes, but farming certainly is. You gotta, for the money you're spending here and the money you're bringing in over here, there's got to be a balance sometimes. And for some farmers, especially after this terrible, disastrous ice storm we had, that balance gets upset for a while, and it's hard to bring it back.
Yeah, and you've got to watch, and you've got to, keep it all in balance. The ice storm has been pretty severe on a lot of farmers, or on most farmers, and the next year's hay crop, of course, may be in jeopardy. There's a lot of things that go to play in there, and you need to really know what you're doing and watch what you're doing.
Yeah, as one of the most successful farmers around here, I'd like to have you predict what kind of a spring and summer we're going to have. You got to know the weather too,
Right, it all depends what El Nino, has in store for us. So it's pretty hard to say.
Most of us never spoke Spanish before that, but now we know 2 words anyway. El Nino.
Yeah.
Dutch, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks so much for being such a big part of the farming life here.
Well, it's something I've always enjoyed, and my son enjoys it, and hopefully he'll keep it going.
Let's keep it doing. Thanks again. It's too bad. We ought to do a show of outtakes sometimes, the things that we say just before the camera starts. Bob Dumas, I turned this way and he said, "Is that your good side?" I said, "Well, it's the outside anyway. It's the round side." How are you, Bob?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Glad to have you over here for Pioneer Days today. What have you been talking about with your friends?
Oh, the weather, mainly the ice storm, naturally. But now we're looking to hope for better weather and spring coming.
Yeah, boy, there's always hope, huh? Always hope. And we knew that we were going to have to talk about the ice storm when we came here today, because there's so many people still talking about it. And I think it's part of the process of getting over it is to get it out of our system.
That's right.
Now when the weather turns and all this snow and stuff is gone, maybe we can forget about that ice storm and just prepare for the next disaster, whatever that might be.
Yeah, first we got to clean up all this mess. So
Yeah, you know,
so
that's
it's
a
gonna
that's
be a
a
little
factor.
harder than you can't get in the fields. You got to clean all the brush up and the trees. Not to mention the woods, but.
Yeah, not to mention the woods. We've spent a lot of time talking about maple syrup operators today as we're pouring that beautiful golden nectar on our pancakes, and how some of these people who've had sugar bushes in their families for 115, 120 years, the biggest struggle is to even get to the trees, and then try to find out how many tens of thousands of dollars damage there was to that tubing under the ice and snow.
Tubing in the trees, right?
And the trees.
Yeah, you're talking at least 50 years or 80 years to replant them.
Maybe you and I won't be around. You might be around, but I probably won't be.
No, somebody else will have to do it, I
Let's
think.
talk about the Farm Bureau and how'd you ever get hooked up with that organization?
Oh, I've been a member for a good many years, I guess, since I started farming. They do what they can to help out and try to. Good thing we have somebody like that, that fight for the farmers, and look out for our interests. And,
Farm Bureau has always been a very strong lobbying group here in the North Country and all across the United States.
yes, they have. Like I said, I've been a member for a good many years, and I believe in it.
Well, you can't do any better than believing in it, but what kinds of things do you do in your course of your association with the Farm Bureau?
Well, I served on the board for, I think it was 9 years or something. I was president for a couple of years. Give somebody else a crack at that after. And it takes up a lot of time. That's the problem. Wrong. Always have something else on the go. So.
But there's always issues that
right.
have to be talked about, and somebody's got to have an advocate. That's a word the word advocacy is one that people are learning more and more, and I know I learned that in my new job as a crime advocate here in Clinton County, but farmers have to have advocates too, and that's where the Farm Bureau can help.
Right. Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree.
What are some of the biggest issues facing the farmers, do you think, up here? I mean, you could probably start and go from 1 to 100, but what do you think some of the biggest are?
I think one of the biggest issues for the New York farmers is going to be whether they can get that compact through. It's maybe not the answer to all our problems, but it sure would help with the price of milk,
What's the status right now?
It's got to go through the assembly, I believe, and they said that might be a problem. I don't know. Hope we can get it through there. It's passed the one house, so no problem. And Governor Pataki is behind it, so that's a good sign. Like personally, my milk goes into Vermont, so it doesn't affect me. But we need New York's support, and the New York farmers sure need to come.
Things are a little bit different up in our little corner of northern New York. We've already interviewed farmers from Quebec, farmers from Vermont, who do business on this side of the lake, and there's probably more cooperation among farmers from those three areas than on almost any other level.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt there is. Right? Yeah, it's unique right in the corner like that.
Yeah, and you have to explain to people why the compact won't affect you if you send your milk to Vermont.
Well, because we belong to the compact. Our milk, any milk that goes into Vermont qualifies for the compact, and it's sold in Vermont. And that's why, even though we're in New York State, we're getting the benefits of the New England Dairy Compact.
How big a percentage of farmers do it the way you do it, do you think?
Probably in this area, I would say probably 20%. There's a considerable number. But like I said, if New York would join, it would help us out too. It would make it that much stronger. Because there's a lot of southern states and different areas that are starting compacts and trying to get them going. If we could get it statewide, it would be a lot stronger.
Do you think it'll happen?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. But it needs to happen. Something needs to happen.
Nobody said life was easy or fair, right, Bob?
That's right.
Hey, thanks so much for coming over here today, and thanks for everything you've done on behalf of the farmers in this area.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, there you have it, a little overview about what Pioneer Days are all about at Bourdeau Brothers here on the Mason Road in Champlain. And I do apologize to all my friends from the Northern Tier and elsewhere. The people from elsewhere didn't know that we weren't on the Ridge Road. The people who live around here knew darn well we were about 5 miles away from Calvin's place when we came in here, but we have had a wonderful time. I keep going back to the tremendous meal and the maple syrup and the pancakes and the good stuff, but the fellowship of meeting people who work hard for a living and know what the value is of being close to nature in their everyday lives is tremendous for me, and it's a good feeling to talk to farmers who've been through what our farmers have been through, not only over time, but in the last few months here in the North Country, to survive, to thrive. And today, yes, we did kind of talk about the ice storm a lot, but you know what? We were laughing about it because we are survivors. Thanks again for the folks here and allowing us to come to the North Country. Thanks to the farmers from this northern tier who visit us here today. Thanks also to the families that stopped by from Quebec and from across the border in the state of Vermont. We're all one big happy farming family, huh? Can't wait to get under the cows, right? Thanks again. Who knows where we'll be next time as we join you on Hometown Cable for our little corner.